Back with you, the Real Estate Radio Show featuring Chris Lofthus of the Chris Lofthus Group at Keller Williams Realty Boise. And we're telling you right now, reach out to Chris, 350-6228, 350-6228. If you're saying, I want to sell my home, I want to see what it's worth, we'll talk more about the secret list. If you don't want anybody to know you're thinking about selling your home, or more importantly, as you drive along and you see that home, hey, I want to check that out, call Chris at 350-6228. Chance for us to interview and talk to Dennis Schaffner of Schaffner Fine Homes. Chris, you talked a little bit about your guys' relationship. I always open the segment with, if you were to recommend Dennis to someone, now I've seen his work and been around it, but let's pretend that I hadn't seen his work before. If you were to recommend him to someone, what do you tell them about Schaffner Fine Homes?
You know, and excuse me, and I kind of feel like I repeat myself a little bit here, but Dennis is Dennis, kind of the way he runs it, the way just from the beginning all the way through, he believes, I always talk about quality and hiring talent, but with Dennis, you're not going to get what you typically get when you hear complaints about a builder. What I mean by that is when you go throughout the process, when you go out to the job site, you're not going to see a bunch of, junk laying around. Dennis's guys, they clean up after every day. It's a clean job site. And the other thing I would say about Dennis is that Dennis is patient. And so Dennis is going to, everyone's so concerned just when buying a house, but you talk about building a house, you're ratcheting up to a whole new level of anxiety for buyers. And so, the good thing about Dennis is he's patient. He'll take the time to walk you through every single step of the build out.
All right, so Dennis, I'm going to hit on that. I'm the rabble rouser in Paramount, and I always say, well, since when Peter Oliver first started it, and I was one of the first guys in there, so I guess it's okay for me to say this kind of stuff. There are a lot of builders in there making a lot of messes, so I'm going to start with that at night. We like to walk around and look at them all. So I know that seems like a small thing, but that's huge to me because it says to me the builder, if he keeps the working area clean, it's kind of like a surgeon. If you have a messy operating table, a sponge is going to get where it's not supposed to be. So, Dennis, I know from your perspective, you just take that for granted, but for somebody that's planning to build another house, that's very important to us. What's your philosophy on a clean area?
Well, our philosophy, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Chris, I appreciate it. Our philosophy has always been that this is going to be someone's home. And when you come by, we want to make sure that it is always presentable. So we're marketing it basically from the time we dig the foundation on through. Actually, we're even marketing it before by keeping, say you have a lot in inventory for a while, keeping it clean, keeping it presentable, being part of the community, because we are part of that community and we owe that responsibility to everyone living there to not denigrate their environment by neglecting ours. So we do it from the very beginning. And I think it's just good business, and it shows that you're professional and that you're in control and on top of things.
Yeah, and Chris, I hate to be the bad guy because I'm not going to say all the builders in the neighborhood are, but you know what? It only takes 2 or 3. They got 2x12s and 2x6s out in the middle of the road, and you're thinking to yourself, hey, wait a minute. Guys have a clean building area, and I think that's the first snapshot that you'd look for.
Yeah, excuse me. I think that you talk about you go into some of these subdivisions, and again, not picking on builders or anything like that, but you say you go to some of these job sites and there's beer cans laying around, cigarette butts, and all that stuff. That's just something you're not going to find on one of Dennis's job sites for sure.
So, Dennis, let's underline this piece, and Chris brought it up in the last segment, the registered master builder. Now, I know you had first brought this up to me when you came on the show a couple of months back, but this is a passion of yours. It's not just because you're saying, hey, I'm helping my business. You're helping your industry with the Idaho Building Contractors Association. So share with our listeners the philosophy and what your goal is.
Sure. Well, it's always been our philosophy as a company. You have to give back, and if you don't give back, then you're not really being responsible to the community. So you live there, you're part of that environment. So we give back. And part of the way that we've given back is be active in our associations, the Building Contractors Association, the Idaho Building Contractors Association, the National Association of Home Builders. I'm a past president. I sit on 3 or 4 boards involved at the state and local level. I have been involved on the board at the national level as well for quite a few years. Currently, I am the board chairman of the Registered Master Builder Program for the state of Idaho. And right now, I've got 9 members on my board. We meet 3 times a year to consider applicants. Applicants submit a written application to us, which is functioned through the local chapter of the BCA here, and then we take a look at that on the board level each time that we meet, every 3 months. So we have a written application which involves testimonial from past clients, written testimonial, it's not verbal. We check out suppliers, we check out subcontractors, all written documentation. We do financials on the businesses, and we get credit reports on all the principals. So this is all information that we take to the board at board level and discuss that when we decide if someone is going to be allowed to be a new registered master builder or renew their certificate for the coming year. The renewal is only done once a year, and it's only good for that year. So it's not one you get, go about your merry way, and don't have to be responsible. And when you get written response from your clients, it's good. And so, for example, we have to have, if they send out 10 responses from clients, we have to have at least 2/3 written response back from that number before we'll consider the application. So we have a high percentage of response. And sometimes it takes a while because sometimes clients are not seeing the importance of this, so they do eventually get that information. We pass that along to the board, and they make that decision. Since we do it annually, it's fresh information. And not everybody wants to stand up to the scrutiny of that inspection that we do on their financials, their clients, and their subcontractor and supplier base. And it's understandable. But if you're really doing this seriously and not just doing it, as you alluded to yesterday, we had a lot of firemen builders, police builders in the past who weren't really, it was an avocation, not a vocation. With us, it's a vocation. So when we take a look at these applications, we're very serious. 5 years ago, we probably had 75 registered master builders in the state of Idaho. The economy's been tough on everybody. Right now, we're at about 32. And it's leveled out, which is good. So we're not losing any. We're going to actually be gaining new members here shortly. But it's a dedicated board made up of builders. Some are active, some are retired. It's also made up of industry people. So we have a lot of people looking at this application from many different ways. So you get a lot of valuable input. And there's a lot of very good, long-lived experience on that board. So we do this each time. We report to the Idaho State Building Contractors Association at a board level and on the executive committee. So they give a lot of credence to this program, and it's been one that's been around since the mid-'90s and has served well.
Well, you're exactly right, Dennis, when you talk about that. And Dave, if you look at it in the generalities, if I was a buyer, I would definitely want that stamp of approval. And you talk about, what did you say, 38 now?
32.
32. You 32 down from 75, so you can see what happened over the last 5, 6, 7 years. But, you talk about that kind of that stamp of approval, good housekeeping, whatever it is. But, that's why I love working with Dennis, too, because, he takes the extra effort to show his clients and say, look, hey, we're something special. We're not just, some other builder. We take the effort to get that stamp of approval, and we're going to do what we say we're going to do.
Dennis, I want to ask you about a piece here, multi-generation living. What is multi-generation living? What's that mean for the builder? I guess define that first, the home builder that accommodates the multi-generational living.
Well, you're getting several generations that are being forced back together by circumstances of the economy for the most part. So you're talking about, of course, the core parents, and you're talking about their children, which can be high school, college age, and you're talking about grandparents. It could even be aunts and uncles that have fallen in a circumstance where they need to consolidate into one structure rather than each having their own. I know personally, I have 4 children, and every one of them have come back at least once home.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So when we design our home, and our parade home is a great example of multi-generational design, because it was specifically set up so that mom and dad had their private quarters, the kids had theirs with attendant bathrooms and plenty of storage, this sort of thing, and then you had another area which was easily and multi use for either grandparents or guests that just come and visit. But all these had separate entrances, so they could come and go as they wanted, so they weren't treading on each other. But you had a common area, and that being where you commune for meals, for entertainment, this sort of thing. So that's where they would interface, but then they could each go their separate way and have that space. And I think we've been doing this for a long time, and that involves the way you design the house, the width of hallways, for example. If you get elderly people at some point that are wheelchair bound or something like that, then they can move around quite freely. So it was interesting because of during the parade we had a young lady come in that was in a wheelchair. She went around that house of ours without any problem. She got everywhere she wanted to go without assistance, and it was really gratifying because there it was a life test of what you're doing right there.
Yeah, and as well, we talked about this out when we were at the parade homes out there when Jerry and Annette and I came out there. It's true, and Dennis takes the extra time and effort to go, okay, you know what? We're not just going to go 3 bedrooms, 3 baths, whatever. Dennis is going to say, okay, look, what do you want? What's your plan? What is your goals? So maybe it is that they have an elderly, a baby boomer could have an elderly parent living with them, and so you can structure around that, and it could be different circumstances. And like Dennis said, hallway width is huge, and when you start throwing that stuff together. People now are building, especially you see the older generation, 50, 60 years old. I hear them talk. They start making those comments saying, "This is our last house. We're going to build one last house." And are you hearing the same thing, Dennis?
Absolutely. And the other thing is that you need to keep these on a single level for the most part because you don't need stairs for folks that are aging. So, I mean, it's just like when I designed the bathrooms for those homes. In the area that would be dedicated to someone that may be elderly, we did a very easily accessible shower for that individual. In the other area, we put a tub in a shower because I got thinking, boy, when the grandkids come over and I have to throw them in the tub,
right.
It's really easy to do that. So we kind of changed up the paradigm there. So we think it through from those standpoints.
You're listening to the Real Estate Radio Show featuring Chris Lofthus of the Chris Lofthus Group at Keller Williams Realty, Boise. Our guest today, Dennis Schaffner of Schaffner Fine Homes. We want to ask Dennis about, the turnaround. Obviously, he's a builder. He knows better than anybody. How many houses are you building? Are you busy? Is it slow? What's it all about? Remember, you can check out Dennis's website. It's schaffnerhomes.com. That's spelled SCHAFFNER homes.com. And if you've got your digital, or I should say your cell phone with you, 853-0052, 853-0052. We'll take a time out and continue on with the show right after this.